How's it going, everyone? Grim here, and today I want to do something a little bit different. Instead of doing an unboxing video or giving tips on model building, I want to talk, aka rant and rave, about Warhammer 40k. Today's topic is the Alpha Strike. For those of you who don't know, the Alpha Strike is the term the wargaming community uses when they talk about an army that is designed to conduct a powerful offensive attack on the first turn of the battle. In Warhammer 40k 9th edition, a game is called a battle. A battle consists of 5 rounds, and the 2 players have a turn each round. That means the players each get a total of 5 turns, making 10 turns within the 5 rounds of the whole battle. And that's the game. The players do a dice roll-off at the beginning of the game, and the dice gods decide who goes first. Then the players take their turns back and forth for 10 turns. At the end of the 10th turn, the battle is over, and whoever won, well, won. For this video, I'd like to call the first player's first turn, turn 1, and the second player's first turn, turn 2. And then the first player's second turn, turn 3, and the second player's second turn, turn 4, so on and so forth, all the way to turn 10. An Alpha Strike is when the player, who we will call the Alpha Striker, has turn 1 and attacks their opponent, who we will call the Beta Striker, with everything that the Alpha Striker's army has. A complete, massive unloading of ranged attacks and, if possible, melee attacks upon the Beta Striker's army. Turn 1. The goal of the Alpha Strike is to destroy as many enemy units as possible. The goal of an Alpha Strike is not to attack all enemy units. You do not want to cause a little bit of damage to each enemy unit, but rather you want to ensure as many of your opponent's units as possible are completely destroyed and therefore removed from the battlefield. Turn 1. Why? Because while in 9th edition battles are indeed won by getting victory points from achieving primary and secondary objectives, no one can deny that it is fun to destroy your enemy's army. After all, it is a battle simulation game, right? In all seriousness, though, there is some truth to the belief that the player left with the bigger army at the end of the game is most likely the one that also got the most victory points, and therefore wins the game. The more units you have, the more you can secure and achieve objectives. The less units your opponent has, the less they can secure and achieve objectives. Now, why is the Alpha Strike so awesome? 40k battles are for the most part designed to be 2 armies fighting against each other that are relatively even in size and balance. Whether you're using point cost or power level, both armies start the game with the same amount. So for example, a typical 40k game is a 2,000 point army versus a 2,000 point army. Winning gets easier as your opponent's army gets smaller, through units being destroyed throughout the game. So, if the Alpha Striker gets turn 1 and destroys 300 or 400 points worth of the Beta Striker's army, then at the start of turn 2, when the Beta Striker gets to go, they now have a 1,600 point army attacking a solid 2,000 point army. The Beta Striker's army is smaller and therefore weaker than the Alpha Striker's army. In theory, this means the Beta Striker will probably not cause as much damage as if they were the Alpha Striker, and therefore less of the Alpha Striker's army will be destroyed this turn. That means, again in theory, the Alpha Striker's army will always be larger in value than the Beta Striker's army throughout the whole game. As the armies whittle each other down turn after turn, the Alpha Striker's army will maintain their larger army size advantage over the Beta Striker's army. By the end of turn 10, the Alpha Striker's army will be larger than the Beta Striker's army. And remember, your chances of winning are better if your army is larger than your opponent's at the end of the game. Another reason for the importance of the Alpha Strike is that it gives the Alpha Striker the ability and flexibility to try to destroy high-value targets within the Beta Striker's army from the very beginning. Does the Beta Striker's army rely on their warlord and healer character to provide significant buffs to the rest of the army? Depending on the array of the Beta Striker's forces, the Alpha Striker might have the opportunity to destroy those two units at the very beginning of the battle, thereby hamstringing the Beta Striker's army before they have even had their first turn. Ouch. Now, as powerful as an Alpha Strike may sound, it is not a guaranteed way to win, and it can be difficult to pull off. Just because the Alpha Striker goes first in the game, it doesn't necessarily mean they will be able to successfully perform an Alpha Strike. There are many factors that can hamper or downright deny a true Alpha Strike. But if it can be done, the Alpha Strike is a very powerful start to a game and will leave the Alpha Striker's army in a more advantageous position than the Beta Striker's army, hopefully throughout the entire game. So, what are some of these factors that hinder a true Alpha Strike? Number 1, army composition. Is the Alpha Striker's army designed to Alpha Strike? First of all, if the army is mostly melee and does not have the ability to get those melee forces into melee range of the opponent on turn 1, then it's not really designed to be an Alpha Strike army. Most, but not all, Alpha Strike armies are heavily reliant on ranged warfare. Number 2, army size. Is the Alpha Striker's full army on the battlefield? If the Alpha Striker player decided to put some of their forces in strategic reserves and some on the battlefield, they probably can't conduct a true Alpha Strike, since much of their army is not even on the battlefield yet. They're in strategic reserves. Remember, a true Alpha Strike is the ability to use your entire army to attack your opponent turn 1. Number 3, distance. Can the Alpha Striker bear forth the full might of their army, or are some of its forces too far away from the enemy? Weapons profiles determine if some of the enemy units are simply out of range. If so, those units cannot contribute to the Alpha Strike. Those units are useless. Number 4, line of sight. Is enough of the enemy army visible? If most of the enemy army is hiding behind terrain, or the high-value targets are protected by the Lookout Sir rule, a good Alpha Strike may not be possible. You got to be able to see what you want to hit. Now, indirect fire weapons can help with this, but depending on the faction you're playing, that may not be enough to conduct a successful Alpha Strike. I love Alpha Strikes, and I hate Alpha Strikes. It is cool when your army can destroy so much of your opponent's army on turn 1, but truthfully, it is not very fun. Cool, but not fun. A fun game, in my opinion, is when both players are putting forth their best and the game goes back and forth with who will ultimately win, hanging in the balance. Like a good basketball game, right? A game that is close in points is better than a blowout game. My rant is for players to stop alpha striking. Alpha striking is not fun. Designing your army to alpha strike is not fun. It's not fun for the beta striker, and it's not fun really for the alpha striker. I don't think anyone will agree that a game where you completely table your opponent in half the allotted game time is more fun than a game where the players took the full allotted time playing. That's why we play the game, right? To actually play the game. Of course, there are many who will dismiss my rant. Right? These tend to be those that play competitively and not for fun. Competitive play involves winning stuff, winning a prize, winning prize money, winning bragging rights. In that case, most people will win however they can, including a great alpha strike. And that's okay, I guess. If you play competitively, you should expect your opponents to do everything legally possible to beat you, to include a great alpha strike. Full disclaimer, I pretty much only play competitively myself. I rarely do friendly games just for the sake of spending time with my buds playing. If I had to pick competitive or casual as a moniker, a descriptive word for the type of player I am, I'm a competitive player. But even I don't like alpha striking. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment either agreeing with or arguing against my thoughts on the alpha strike. Thank you very much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Grim out.